Hey everyone, welcome to Black Code, where over the next month we're going to be coding a blog website to be adding on to our normal company website. So join us on this journey as we go about putting together this blog project using Python and Django. And maybe just to start off, it is worthwhile saying that this is definitely just me or us kind of showing how we would go about doing it. We're not really going to spend a lot of time explaining things. There's not for people who are still new to coding and things like that. I would say you need to kind of know your way around Python, know your way around Django, because I'm really not going to stop and explain many things. But if you guys do get stuck or there are concepts or things that you would like to be explained, I think definitely do put it down in the comments. I'll make sure to either make a video about it or try to reply to you in the comments specifically. But yeah, let's go ahead and make a blog. And I think today's video is going to be very simple. It's the introduction. We're starting out, so I'm just going to show you guys my normal project setup. So every project I have, there's kind of just some basics that I do to first get it started before we actually get into the code. So come along with me and let's make this blog. So I guess it's worth saying as well that I'm not really going to follow the style that everyone else does of kind of showing you the basics and how to install and start a project and do a virtual environment. I think that is done to death here on YouTube. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it as I would normally do it. My interpreter of choice is obviously PyCharm, as you can see in front of you, meaning that Python is installed, everything is good and ready to go. If you'd like a video, kind of showing how to get to this point, we definitely can do that. But I'm gonna work off of the assumption that you at least know how to get your Python installed onto your PC, that you know how to get your project started and get Django up and running and working as you normally would. So yeah, I think let's sort of get into it. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to, on PyCharm, start a brand new project by clicking on new project. The reason why I do this specifically is because PyCharm kind of does everything for you. So as you can see, it's going to create it's going to create a new virtual environment for me, which is great. I don't need to do that. Yeah, so basically in the location, that's kind of where you'll put the name of the project. So I'm just going to call this BCB22. We're making our virtual environment either with env, pip env. I normally just do a venv, and yeah, it's there. The files are going to be there for you. Your base interpreter, which is the version of Python that you're going to be using. The rest is pretty self-explanatory. Yeah, and this is all pretty much a basic setup for a project. So I then click on create and kind of just give it a sec to do all of its things, rather than having to do all of the other normal admin that you normally do when starting up a project. But cool, the fact that I'm seeing my URLs and my templates file means that we should be good. And as we all know, the way to test is that you run your server. There is the terminal here where I could do the typical Python manage.py run server, press enter, and have it running there. When you click there, you'll see Django's been installed and it successfully works. That's great. But because we're using PyCharm, we actually don't really need to be using the terminal for this. I normally use just the run server section that it's got here, and that is sort of how it's running there, such that I've got my terminal open for other things. So if there's anything else I need to do, I can sort of do it from there. So I've kind of got it running, which is great, right? Let's get into kind of the first things that we do. And the first thing that we see in our root project folder is we come on over to the settings. Now within settings, I generally tend to just get rid of some of the comments that have been put in, and one of the first things that I always do is, because the plan is to eventually deploy this, is to start putting things in place now for once you start to deploy. When you are done with the project and you're about to deploy, you sometimes forget to do certain things, so I prefer to do them in the beginning. So the first thing that I always do is I create a .env file. Then in the .env file, this is where you'll put everything that you need that you don't want to actually be seen on your GitHub repository, or yeah, knowledge or things that shouldn't be public. Everything that should be secret, you put into that env. So I'm just going to take this secret key, and I'm going to do that, make an equals, and then copy the text as it is, without the brackets, not without the brackets, without the comments. Is it? Yeah, without those, and copy it directly onto the env file, right? And I'll show you how to do that. Right, so I know when I eventually do make it, my env or my secret key will be imported from the environment settings. So I just go env and secret key. So basically what's going to happen with what we're going to install, which is Django Environ, it is then going to look for this env file. Then from the env file, it will read whatever the value is under secret key and just populate it there for us. So that's always one of the first ones that I do, because the second that you push this onto GitHub, you are going to get security warnings to say that you have exposed a secret key. Then just one other one that I also tend to do for debug is I go if env debug is equal to true, then do this, then set debug to true, else debug is equal to false. So then based off of this, and maybe let me make this capitalized, off of this you then need to come to your env file, and in your env file you have debug and you equal it to true, right? Keep in mind that the reason why we do it like this rather than just doing something similar to here is that this is sometimes not case sensitive, or it's not easy for it to be able to read. So I think the best way to do it is just checking what this value is and then setting it accordingly, because sometimes you make the mistake of doing something like that, and it will then evaluate it to be false, because when you look at it, it won't be exactly the same because it's case sensitive, and your debug will end up being false. So I think the preferred way to do it is kind of that way. Then just to ensure that all of this works, because as you'll see there's the red squiggly lines after, just below, we're gonna import environ, right? And maybe before we do that, let's actually install environ. And to do that, you come on over to your terminal and you type pip install Django-environ, press enter, and as you can see, pip has installed environ for us, right? So it knows where to get environ. And I guess while we're at this step, one of the critical important things that you do in the beginning is also just ensuring that you've got your dependencies ready. So I always go pip freeze requirements.txt, press enter, and there we go. Now we've got a requirements folder, and what you'll see in your requirements folder is everything that's been installed. So the critical thing is there's Django, it's been installed, and what we just installed now, which is Django Environ. This is just so that wherever you install this, all of these dependencies can be installed once you are there. But anyway, let's get back to the env section. And just to make sure that these envs can read, I always have env environ.env, and then you have the ability to read it there. This is just so that it's able to get the actual env files. Let's keep scrolling down in our settings to see if there's anything else. For now, there's nothing we're really going to add in installed apps. There's nothing we're going to do on middleware. Thankfully, templates have been done for us. Our templating structure has been set up, so we need not worry. Currently, the database has this DB SQLite 3, which is perfectly fine. I normally develop locally on this, but one thing that I like to add to my projects is just making sure I've got my in production settings ready to go. So for that, I just liked to paste this. Normally I use Postgres, and for this one, definitely in production, we will be using Postgres. And I think with that, it actually reminds me of something else that we need to install, which is this PSY copy 2. So similar to what we did with the previous install, you will pip install, do that, and it was okay. Let's look at the error. Okay, it's saying we should rather do the binary version, which is fine. Let's do that. Pip install. Cool, now it's done. Just to make sure that we update our dependencies, we do pip freeze requirements.txt just to show you that it actually does work. Click on enter, and then you'll see there it has been added. It's not really relevant when we're working with it now because we have this DBSQL 3, but like I said, sometimes I forget just before it's time to deploy, so I always like to have these ready to go. Cool. Password evaluators, that's great. Time zones, wonderful. Static, we'll get into that. And yeah, that is for now all we're going to do in settings. Yeah, so that's kind of the first kind of start thing that you do. I always like to come over to URLs as well, just clear everything out, the comments that are there, and just look at kind of the first URL pattern that we've got, which is all good and well. And I think that is sort of the basic first setup, that we do. So I think just one thing that I will do is I will just set up the two apps within the project that I'm going to be using. The first one being account. So to actually do that, you go python manage.py start app, and then you list the name, which is account. Press enter, and then you'll see a new folder or directory has come up, which is your account with all of the files that you'll be using. But I'll just create another one. I will call this one, let's call it blog. It's a bit unoriginal, but hey, it will get the job done, right? So now we have these two new folders that we've added. Once you've done that, you always come on over to your installed apps. Now I like to put comments just to ensure that I know what is a third party app that we've added and what is our own app. Cool. So now we know we've added account, and we've also added in blog, right? Just make sure that you always put in that trailing comma there. Many a time have we made mistakes when it comes to that. And also what I just like to do when that happens is I like to add in the path, just for that. So as you can see, I'm using GitHub Copilot is worth saying, which kind of predicts what it thinks I'm going to do, and rightfully so, it knows I'm going to add an include. So what I just do is I press tab to allow it to fill in for me. I'm going to import include, but instead of home, I'm going to do account .urls, and then I'm just going to copy the same thing over and do one for blog as well. Blog URLs, right? And you'll see that they are, have this highlight tab because it can't really find the files yet. Because we've not actually created them, we do need to go ahead and create those files. What I am going to do, one thing that I always like to do, just to help with my building of projects and make it look a bit better, as you can see, this has not been indented like that. That's how you would normally do it. You'd normally just do the indent, but actually there is something you can install on your PyCharm. If you come over to your settings and you go over to tools, I think it is, there is a plugin or a tool you can install called Actions on Save, or I think it used to be called Save Actions, where I just click on reformat code and optimize imports. Basically what this does for you is that it helps to kind of do things for you automatically. So as you can see, we had this path there. All I have to do is press save, and then it will line up my code or indent everything as it needs to be indented. So quite a cool thing to have. Kind of does half of the job for you. But let's go ahead and make the two URLs file. And I guess it is worth saying that when you first install the app or start an app, it doesn't natively come with its own URLs. You'll kind of need to put it in. Actually, just one thing I want to do, I want account to always reference account and do that blog, because the landing page will be there. We're just going to leave this empty. This is basically where you create the URLs for all of the endpoints that you'll be having, but we'll get into that once we get there. This again is just the initial setup. So then here, what I like to do, I like to just right click and install the URL. So you go new Python file, we're just going to call it URLs, press enter, right? And then you'll see now that we made it an account, this is no longer grayed out kind of like that, because it can actually find the file. Then all you're going to do in this guy is have your URL patterns, which needs to be a list of URL patterns. Let's create the first one, which will be path. Then we're going to, this is account, so I'm just going to leave the first one open for now, comma, it needs to be linked to a view, so let's just call a view account. Actually, and I tend to like to use class-based views. If you don't know what that is, don't worry, but let's go account home template view.asView, and let's call it account home. All right, let's just import path. We're going to import the name of path, which is from Django URLs path. Cool. This doesn't exist, so we can't really import it yet, but I'll show you how we're going to make it. I'll just click on that. As views, just when using class-based views, you need to kind of add that on, and I just add the name just so that it's easier to resolve specifically what URL we are looking for. I'm just going to come on over to views and just create that view specifically. And as I said, I use class-based views. You might not know what that is, which is perfectly fine. All you need to know is that this is basically going to be the engine room behind what all of this is. So we just made that import to kind of ensure that we don't have any errors here, and there is no error here. Basically what I did, I created a class, called it account home template view, imported template view from Django's generic templates. Again, when we get into class-based views, you will have a better understanding of what that means. So we've got the template name, and as you can see, it's grayed out because there's account home. It's not quite sure what's going on here. So what I will do is I click on accounts, and we're going to make a folder. So you go directory and you call it templates, right? And then within templates, you also give it another folder, and the name is account, right? So now you'll see that first part has been grayed out, so it's found that file. That file is now there. And then we've got account home.html. So we're going to make a new HTML file called account home, right? And this is the first HTML file. I'm not going to work on this quite yet, but as you can see now, this template is actually working, right? I'm going to pretty much do the same thing in blog. So yeah, you can stick around while I do it, but basically I'm just gonna, let's start off with the templates. So templates, within templates we rename it to, not rename it, make another directory called blog. Cool. And then I'm just gonna create an HTML file called home, right? I'm gonna come back and work on this in a second. Let me just close everything so I can get my mind around what I'm doing. Cool. We need to create the URLs for blogs, so new Python file. So we go URLs is what we're gonna call it. Then we take URL patterns, do this, and then you create a list. Then within the list you go path, path. We're gonna call it, okay, no, that's not what we're doing. All right, path list, just make sure that we import it. Import this name, Django URLs path. It is worth also saying that wherever you've got in PyCharm, when you've got this red underlined part, kind of like you've made a spelling error, you kind of just put your cursor over it, and this idea thing comes, and it kind of gives you options on what you can and can't do with that, or how you can fix it. So for example, this one, index view doesn't really exist, right? It's not a native Python thing. It's not anything we've created, so it wants to create this for you. You see, which generally when you do something like that, that's what it does, is that it immediately creates that specific in this case, it knows that it's a class. It creates that class for you. But I'm gonna get rid of that, and we're gonna call it home template view, right? Similarly to what we had before, you're going to come on over to views. We are going to create our class-based view with the name home template view. Which inherits from Django's generic template view, blog home, and that should pretty much be that. This URL, let's just make sure that we're now importing it. So now when we click on this, it recognizes that it comes from our views, and now it has imported that. So based off of that, now when we run the server, we should come on over to this page. How you'll see that, if we click on run over there and we come over this side, we should get a blank page with nothing. Before, we would get Django's installation page, but now we're getting nothing. Just to prove that indeed this is the page that we're looking at, let's call it black code blog. Right, and now I'm just gonna put an h1 tag and say welcome to black code. Cool. Right, refresh the page, there we go, title is changed, and there we've got our HTML saying welcome to black code. So at least we know for a basic we've started, everything is kind of working as we expected to. And yeah, this is kind of the first initial basic setup. There's one other thing that I want to do just to wrap up today's episode, and that is just to run our migrations. I don't know if you saw when we started, we had this, you have 18 unapplied migrations and your project won't work until you do that. So that's basically just, without getting into too much detail, Django connecting the app or your application to the database. Basically, when you migrate or you make migrations, you're writing all of the tables that you've created to your SQL server. Just if I can show you, not your SQL server, rather your SQL database. As you can see, this is kind of the DB SQLite 3. This is the database that we're going to be using, as you saw in the settings. When you double click on it, there's nothing because we've not made any migrations. It's just there, it exists. But when you come on over to the terminal, generally what we do, you go python manage.py. I always start off by making migrations, so make migrations. That basically just tells Python to look to see if there's any changes I've made on any of my models. Then based off of that, kind of prep those to be made, but there aren't any. So then the next thing that you go do is python manage.py migrate, and then you'll see it has applied all of these migrations. Now you can see our DB SQLite, it's even blue now. It means it's got some data, some information. I'm just going to do this just so I'm able to actually explore all of the tables on the database. And as you can see, we do have a database. It does have tables, and let's see, these are all of the basic kind of tables that Django comes with installed. So cool, that is that done. Right, so pretty much this is all that you need to do to kind of get started. Now, one thing that I always do is I always make sure that the file is uploaded to the cloud, and also it is in GitHub. So my files always save, or my projects rather always save onto my OneDrive. This is just in case I lose my computer or something happens and I've lost the actual computer. The code still remains both on my cloud, which I use OneDrive, as you can see there, but also in GitHub. All right, so we're just gonna prepare to share this to GitHub. So what I'm going to do is create a .git ignore. Basically, what a .git ignore is that there's a whole bunch of files like this venv file and a bunch of other files that form part of this project, but really you do not need to send them to GitHub because it takes up a bit of space, and also yeah, they're just not necessary for your project. So it's all of the files that we want Git to ignore when we are committing this specific project. And yeah, I'm gonna just copy a git ignore that I had from elsewhere. Cool. uh, so as you'll see, the git ignore kind of goes through the different kind of things that it tells Git to ignore. So the first thing is that it ignores all of the Django project, the Django files that we don't need. So db SQLite 3, so this database won't be committed to Git with everything else. Then there's all of these .idea, just a bunch of different things that are there. I'm going to remove that, and I prefer to get rid of the .github and the settings, but this one I should call bcb 22 settings. But I'm going to comment it out for the first time, just so that initially it does initially send out or upload the settings. And it's actually just reminded me of one other thing I need to go fix in settings, because again, I usually deploy this to the cloud. I prefer to just uncomment my database, the Postgres version, and then comment out the db SQLite 3. Save it. Yeah, this is how I would like my project to appear on GitHub, but when I'm working with it, I will uncomment this just so that that's the database I use. The only reason why this actually happens is that if you are like me and you work on a Mac, Mac sometimes has updates and it just tends to mess up with your installation of different things. So my Postgres installation locally is messed up. I probably should fix that, but for now, this is kind of the workaround that we have, and I think that's kind of the theme I'm trying to show with this, is that we work around a lot of things. Whatever problems there are, challenges that there are, there is a workaround that would allow you to do what you need to do. But basically, yeah, there's our git ignore. Our settings are going to be committed for the first time, then afterwards we will cancel it out. But basically, this is how I start all of my projects and kind of get it initially set up to go and work. So what I'll do is I will then send this to GitHub. So basically what I do, I come up here to VSC, click on share project on GitHub. Right now it's got my account logged in, but we've got bcb 22, that's the repo name, that's where it's going to be. And if there's something I wanted to share, I would share it. I'm gonna untick private. This is just going to mean that the project is now available publicly, so anyone can log onto my GitHub and see. But then we're going to call it the Black Code Blog App. Right, I'm going to click on share. Right, and this is going to be the initial commit. So this is now then showing me all the files that it wants to commit. So this is everything that I had all throughout here, and you'll see there's certain files. You see this the venv is this mustardy color together with the db SQLite. That's because the git ignore is saying we don't want to commit these files, but the red tells us all these are prepped for being committed, but they've not been committed yet. And you've got a commit message, so we'll do initial commit. I'm going to click on add, and as you can see down here, it's pushing and it has shared the project on GitHub. Just to show you what that is going to look like, come on over to GitHub. Right, I'll go to my profile and look at my repos, and as you'll see, there's a repo bcb22. That is what we have just made, And yeah, these are all of the basic files that we had. So at this point, this is generally where I would stop. Um, and it kind of wraps up the first episode of this blog series. I hope you were able to follow along with me. I hope um, I explained where I could explain. I know there's a lot of things that I did that maybe if you're a beginner or someone who's never worked with Python or with Django, you have no idea what I did. And yeah, maybe just comment down below if that's how you feel. Then maybe, for the coming episodes, I'll kind of slow it down and take you through everything in a slightly slower pace. But for now, this is the BCB blog for Black Code software development. Remember, Black Code, we are software developers. Any project, anything that you'd like us to build or that you think we could build for you, your business, or anyone else that you know, definitely do hit us up. We can definitely do a thing for you. And yeah, that was today's episode. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.